half of my team are Gen Zs. And they're fantastic. Year one was to build the rails. Everything we're doing now is we're building on top of that. Could there be a day where you can be so sure your card will never fail? Could there be a day that a payment can be done and it will never fail? What that does is that the system or the transaction, to bring it to a layman, is that the transaction does not need to leave one system to get to another system to make it work. You know, today you have Africa going to San Francisco. San Francisco will come to Africa.
You start with your background, right? More than 15 years in payments with some very interesting names. So how did you get to this point?
I always like to start from when I was an 8-year-old.
Okay.
Grew up with my mom, who was very much into business. I always tell people that at 8, I knew the difference between cost price and selling price.
Interesting.
And
Why are you not Igbo?
well, interestingly, people call me. I have a lot of Igbo names like Nena and the like. So
You actually look like an Nena.
I always say that if they need to do some digging deep, I'm probably from Monisha, you know.
Probably.
Anyway, so started off that way. Started off. Went into university. Went to Unilag actually, and then had a stint in the oil industry. Pre, during, and post NYC.
Okay.
It was very interesting. That's a story for another day. And then right after that, went into banking. So started my financial services experience in banking. So did 10 years in banking, and then went into remittance. So rose till I became the head of English Africa for MoneyGram, and then left from there to Visa, and then was head of West Africa for Visa. And then I'm here running a startup. So the times that I sit down at my desk and it's like, sometimes I'm applying what I learned in banking. Sometimes I'm applying what I learned in remittance. Sometimes I'm applying the knowledge gained from Visa. So this is like a culmination of everything I've done over the years. It's exciting because now I've always been on the B2B side, telling the partners what to do. Now I'm doing it. And so it's very exciting just being the one actually, now go do what you were telling us to do, right? So it's been fun. It's been really fun. You can say that again. But I think I love the challenge. And I think it's the fact that I'm also able to bring in not just most businesses will kind of just bring in the practicality of it, but I also understand the theory of it.
Okay.
And so it's that fusion between both that actually makes it very unique.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So something I noticed is September appears a lot in your career journey. So you're either leaving a place in September.
Honestly, it was not planned. I thought about that at some point. That what happened is always September, October. This has not been planned, but hey, it's been my year. Maybe I should go do some checking into my history to know what happened in September, October.
But I was about to ask whether there was something that happened.
Just a coincidence. Just a coincidence.
All right. So speaking of hydrogen, you're playing in possibly the most competitive fintech space in Nigeria right now. You have really large companies that have been around for a very long time. So why hydrogen and why now?
I think it's the vision. I think that's the unique thing for me. The vision for hydrogen, is to build Africa's most powerful business services network. And what that pretty much means is being in that infrastructure play, bringing the different partners together. It's almost like a melting point.
Okay.
And then just being able to ensure that we're doing it and taking it to the next level. So the fintech industry has been on for a while.
Yeah.
And great job, fantastic things we've done in the industry, when you look at the fintech community. But there's more. I always talk about how could there be a day where you can be so sure your card will never fail? Could there be a day that a payment can be done and it will never fail? And it's possible. It happens in the developed world. In fact, your card, if you take your card and you travel, you realize that you never have those experiences. So why? So for us, and for me particularly, it's about how do we take Nigeria and Africa to that level? And it's not impossible. I think we have what it takes to be able to get there. So for me, it's about the vision. That's one. The second thing is closely tied to that vision is what it's going to do for Africa. So we say that we want to propel Africa into a brighter future. We want to be able to erase that brand, that false image, that negative image about Africa, and being able to take us to that level that, yes, we can stand shoulder to shoulder with any big tech in the world. That's it.
So you speak of there being more that can be done in fintech space, and it's this is like a move that is, I'd say, curious for me, because you don't always see fintechs that are not being run by some 21-year-old who is barely out of school. You have, your experience is probably longer than that of most of the fintechs around. So what is that more? How does hydrogen differentiate itself from competitors? And are there specific market gaps that you're looking to fill that your competitors haven't filled up to this point?
So the other day I was having a chat with some of the colleagues in the office, and we're kind of doing an analysis of some African country we're trying to go into. And they had no understanding of the diversity between the Nigerian market and that market. And it brought to the fore how complex the Nigerian market is and how we've made payment. Now, I spoke about getting to that point where payments can be completely seamless. Believe it or not, part of the reason is the process flow we've employed here. That is one of the first things that we're trying to fix, and which is why we went for the type of license we went for, because it allows us to play at different touch points on the value chain. What that does is that the system, or the transaction, to bring it to a layman, is that the transaction does not need to leave one system to get to another system to make it work. Of course, that would require us having a lot of integrations to different banks at some point and have all the banks at some point, but that's the journey and that's where we are. So we will get to the point that transaction, you could almost say that it's just a one-stop thing, and that starts to reduce the number of touch points and failure points. So that's definitely one. The second thing, closely linked to that as well, is now the creativity you can bring from the fact that things are seamless. Because you can now start to leverage the data, because what's happening today is that the data is all fragmented. And so you're not able to actually build that and use that to create more things in the society. So if we have a lot more visibility, I can sit down with end of my FIs that I work with to say that this is the data we're saying, you can actually grow your business 10x. Because we are saying this. We don't see a lot of that. So there isn't anything around advisory and consulting in the fintech industry with the partners that we work with today. And I think that's one of the key areas that we are focused on.
Okay. So just this, I want us to speak a little more on that.
Yes.
I know this is still early days. Have you seen any data that points to what a business can do, like a lot more that a business can do? What data points are you seeing that makes you say, okay, these are some things that we think we can do for these businesses?
I'll give you an example. Today, FMCGs. And FMCGs have the chain of distributors, key distributors, and that line. Very often what happens is, as you get further down, there's shortage of cash to be able to make the purchase at the particular time. The FMCGs, just so you know, they don't mind giving credit. Giving those items out on credit, but they don't have visibility on inventory. Now, one of the things we're looking at is how do we start to handshake the inventory in the store with the payment, and ensuring that the FMCG can take an informed decision. Know that, you know what, I'm safe doing this because there's still going to be more coming in. All that, you'll be amazed how payment is tied into to those transactions. That's just one element. You can also look at it within the gas stations. So the gas stations, every now and then, there's a pattern. There's a pattern of the peak time, the low time, There's a pattern of today, I mean, everybody's selling at some price. What more can they do with that? What's the trend they are seeing with who comes? What kind of partnership can they have with big companies with large footfall to actually start to balance and have a handshake? So it's just looking at those different elements and then creating, additional value to those institutions and ensuring that their business can scale up. We have to do it, and the reason why is, believe it or not, we're not as rich as the developed part of the world.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wastage in what we do. So the data and just working with partners will start to bring in more efficiency as well, and ensuring that margins can be a lot better for companies that we work for.
Awesome. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that because I was watching a recent interview with AIG. I think the interview was released like a few days ago, and he mentioned something similar that he is working on.
Interesting. I didn't even watch that.
Okay. I think you can check it out. I will send you the link later. But yeah, you are part of the Access Corporation, and that's one of the largest financial institutions in Africa. What kind of benefits comes with being part of the group, and are there any disadvantages to that?
We're all part of an ecosystem any which way.
Okay.
In my former place of work, I had partners that I worked with. As far as I was concerned, it was an ecosystem. So it depends on how we look at it.
Okay.
To this particular point, Access Corporation is an investor in hydrogen. One of the things that Access Corporation has done fantastically well is build, various companies within that ecosystem, and each one is independent. Each one has its identity. Each one has been able to evolve and stand on its own. What that does is that, in as much as there's an ecosystem, there is that individualistic piece as well. That ensures that when I sit down with another company within the ecosystem, it's more of having an objective view to say, is there a business opportunity here or not? So I tell people that sometimes my negotiations are even more difficult within the ecosystem than outside. Why? Because of the way Access Corporation has built it, and I think it's very healthy.
Okay.
Why, as well, is my business is such that I don't work only for the ecosystem. I mean, I probably have one or two clients within the ecosystem when I talk about individual entities, but I have much more clients outside of the ecosystem.
Of course.
And so I need to ensure that there is that fair play. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that I see that the corporation has built. So in terms of advantages, well, I guess it's the fact that I have one or two clients from the ecosystem.
So you're not starting from ground zero?
I'm not starting from ground zero. But guess what? It took me a while even getting them. So it wasn't a walk in the park.
Okay.
And then, of course, it helped me to probably get a better sense of how some of my FIs may also want to deal with me. And of course, that helped me in my negotiations with my other FIs. But that's pretty much it. Are there disadvantages? With every partnership you find yourself, you have to always think about the fact that what am I doing that could affect the other entity? Unfortunately, the way the average man on the street is, I'm sure they can't even tell the difference between Access Bank and Access Corporation.
Of course.
Right. However, Access Corporation is the investor. Access Bank for me is one of my clients. And so what typically happens is, if something goes wrong with the corporation, for instance, everybody could think it's the bank. If something goes wrong with hydrogen, somebody could think it's one of the other verticals. So it puts me on my toes to ensure that we are running the business in a way that there's a lot of responsibility, there's a lot of focus, there's a lot of excellence that we're bringing in, because so I don't create a ripple effect on the other verticals within the corporation, and vice versa. So I think that's the angle I look at it from a possibility of a disadvantage, that I need to always watch my back and ensure that, hey, you're not alone. It's more like a married man, right? You don't live for yourself, you live for your family. Yeah. And that's it.
Okay, so you've been running for roughly a year,
yes.
And I'm sure you've made some progress. Can you share some details around that. What are your transaction volumes, for example? How many businesses do you currently serve? How many customers? I know you mentioned something about expanding beyond Nigeria. So what has happened on that front?
Wow, a year already. Each day went by so quickly. I sometimes go like, is it, how come I think 24 hours isn't enough anymore.
We need
But
more time.
we need more time.
Yeah.
But it's been an exciting one. We pretty much started business maybe this time last year. And I think we had just one product maybe launched by end of Q1, pretty much. Today we have about 8 products spread across FIs, merchant business and all. We've been able to sign up 11,000 merchants on the pay side. We have presence in 36 states and the FCT. We have staff members, both direct and indirect, of over 200 already, scattered all across Nigeria. We've made quite some mileage, and we already have about 8 financial institutions, direct, FIs and OFIs already work with us.
Okay.
So it's been very great. There's been triple-digit growth on most of the products and the transactions we've been doing, but we're still very young. And I think we say that we're no more a baby, we're now a toddler.
You should be going to crèche now.
Yes, we're going to crash now. So that's where we are.
Okay.
But what we're looking for 2024, for us, beyond Nigeria, it's now looking at Africa. And so there's some conversations already going on with potential partnerships on how we can, work together to start to open up some of those cross-border money movements that would ease merchant collections.
Okay. So I think in the Access Corporation's annual reports last year, you mentioned profit in your address, I think about 2 or 3 times. And that sort of points to where you're going.
Yes.
And speaking with your team earlier, there was a sense that you don't want to just be like every other fintech. And the reason I say this is most of the fintechs around are pushing for huge numbers. So they want to tell you we have 1 million merchants or we have 2 million people using our product. But it appears you have a similar interest in growth and profit. How do you balance that? You need to grow quickly, but you also need to get profits ASAP. So how do you manage the two
I love
demands?
this question. Over the last 6 months, you would agree that there's been a lot of shake-up in the fintech space, not just in Nigeria, across the world.
Yeah.
Part of it is because a lot of the players within the fintech space, they are good, they're creative, but they're not necessarily business people.
True.
You need a balance of both to run a successful business. In my previous places of work, I've had to work quite a bit with fintech partners, and one of the things that used to be very amazing was the lack of even governance structure or even understanding what that means. And so that is definitely one of the things that a key area where we're different. We look at the numbers, we look at the margins, and we look at not just for us, but also for our merchants. Because sometimes even the merchants don't understand exactly what they're getting into. Okay. And so we even prefer that kind of advice to the FIs that we work with to say, look, you can actually be more profitable if you're routing your transactions through us this way. We're helping them to see the numbers and ensuring that there's more margin they're retaining. That's definitely one. The second area, you spoke about the profit thing. Yes, we are big on value accretion. So we have to create value for ourselves as an organization. We have to create value for our partners and merchants. We have to create value for our community. And those are 3 key areas for us. So when we think about value, it's not just for us, it's about the partners we work with, and it's also for our community. Now, how do we have the balance? The other day, I cracked a joke with someone. I said, the race to being the first in the shortest possible time does not mean you're going to remain the first forever. It's
Yeah.
about being focused about how you want to get to number one. But for you to get there, you have to build deep roots. And so that's what we're doing. We're ensuring that we're creating, we're building the roots, we're building the rails, we're building the quality, we're building the right services. And for you to be able to do that, to get there, there must be incremental value, which means there must be some cash. And so for us, that's the way we look at it. So yes, we are laser focused. How do we, there was a question you asked to say, how are you balancing both, because we're trying to run as well. I think that's where the most critical part of any organization comes, which is your people. If you want, I love football. So I always make references to
Are you an
football.
Arsenal fan by now?
Oh, yes, I am. No, let's talk about the games.
That's really sad.
Well, you see, I always say that if you fall in love with an Arsenal fan,
Oh no.
you should be
I know where
you
this
should
is
be
going.
very happy and comfortable because there's loyalty.
On the other hand, you might also want to be careful. The person probably has a high tolerance for pain and just loves sadness. Don't know.
Oh no, or maybe you should see it this way. The person actually knows how to create joy on the inside and is not influenced by what they see around.
That sounds like a coping mechanism. Sounds like a coping mechanism.
Oh my God. So let's go back to that. So it's about the people.
Okay.
You can have all the great strategies. You can have the great processes and the great tech. If the team is not cohesive, if the team is not focused, if the team does not understand the same vision, then that's where you have the problem. We're joking about it during the end of year team meeting. Like, how did we do this, guys? I mean, I wasn't in everything, right?
Yeah.
But we were able to achieve. Why? Because they understood exactly the vision. No shades here, but I hear people say, oh, this Gen Zs, you can get half of my team are Gen Zs. And they're fantastic. They're amazing.
Some redemption.
So it's about understanding how to work with them.
Okay.
I have a fantastic team, and I say that all the time. And I don't have to chase them. You have them understanding exactly the vision of the company. And so what they can probably do, if they know they can achieve 5 things in an hour, sometimes because they know the vision, they'll push it to 7 by themselves without anybody pushing them to doing it. And so it's that additional 2 from different people that actually has helped us to achieve so much in such a short time.
All right. Do you think your, ease and success managing a younger workforce comes from your experience as a mother? Do you think that plays any role?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe because of my personality as well. So I would typically treat people equally.
Okay.
I believe I don't see age. I don't see gender. So I just see an individual. So I would typically treat someone the way they are and try to appreciate where they're coming from. So maybe that's it.
Okay. All right. So speaking of building a foundation, right, and basically a foundation that sets you up for success. Fintechs or tech companies generally are known for having a certain culture.
Yeah.
The culture is usually agile, you're moving very fast. And like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it means there are no clear-cut structures on how things should work. What kind of a culture are you building at Hydrogen? And how important do you think that culture is?
So when we started from a garage. And there was definitely very little structure. I think we've been able to do quite some work since then.
Okay.
And we knew we had to do it early because we knew where we're going to. If you don't fix it early, you're gonna hurt yourself later. So we started to put the structure. And one of the things we started to do was even the regular cadence of team engagement. People don't understand how important it is, because I say this to the team all the time. Now, if when you were born, your name was called maybe once a year, chances are maybe by year 10 before you realize that's your name. And that's the power of communication. Very often what happens is people are not communicating enough. And so even the regular cadence of just echoing and echoing and echoing where we're going to, why we want to do this, why we want to do this, it's already forming, things in people's minds. So those were some of the things we started to just the cadence. Started putting structures around controls, started putting, and helping them understand why. So I always, if somebody understands why they're doing what they're doing, they'll probably resist less. Why do we need to put in this control? Is so to protect you. Yeah. And so those things, we started putting them in place. And so we've been able to do that. So when you look at the culture, what's the culture of hydrogen today? We've had a few exits. Hey, there's a jackpot thing, everybody's going out. We've had a few of that, but I think the culture always here is that it's a learning environment. I hear that from every single person, that I've learned a lot. In 1 month, I've learned a lot. So we kind of encourage people, give people the sense of ownership, and they just get into it. So that's one. The second thing I hear a lot is it's quite a very agile place. So there's an issue, things need to be fixed. The ideas are coming, people are already brainstorming and getting it fixed. So that's very common. The third thing I hear is that there's a strong team spirit. So people are not individualistic. People see one goal, one vision, one dream, one KPI. And I think that has also helped us.
All right. So partnerships are very important to build long-lasting companies.
Fintech, yeah.
And in fintech, we've heard lots of talk. I think there was even one last week on a collaboration between banks and fintechs. Yeah. We've heard these stories or rumors for so long, and nothing has really come out from it. One common thing I hear when I ask people in this space is everybody believes partnerships, collaboration works or is important, but nobody wants to get involved in the collaboration. What do you think banks, fintechs can do to basically build that collaboration? And we say this because, for example, you play in payments right now, and there's the issue of fraud, and it could devastate any business, right? And if you don't partner, I was asking someone last week, you know that you would suffer if you're hit by hackers, for example. Yeah. So why don't you partner with people? In the end, you're kind of saving yourself. So what do you think is the missing element in these conversations, and why the collaboration conversations don't move from just conversations?
When you're getting into a partnership, you have to put everything on the table.
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. I'm going to play within this space to this space. You're going to have to tell me you're going to play within this. We see where the overlap is. And we decide from the very beginning if we're going to compete there or somebody is going to have to let it go for the other. That's how partnership works. Very often, people don't get to that point, and they get into the partnership.
Why do you think they don't get to that point?
Fear. They're just afraid that, how is the other partner going to react to this? I'm very transparent. And it's a culture of hydrogen. We would get to the room with you. We will tell you exactly the area and where we think. We'll probably even prefer solutions. I'll tell you option A, B, C. We collaborate. We continue to compete here. Or I let it go for you, or you let it go for me, and you pay me this. And I think if we go into partnerships that way, we would have them working better because there's trust.
Okay, I think that was, I don't know if that was exactly what I was expecting, but I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
It works even for a girl and a guy.
Yeah, it does. All right, so I'm gradually coming to the end of this. Over the next, let's say, 6-7 months, should I be expecting any new product from hydrogen?
I wouldn't call it product. I would call it So let me explain what we did in year one. Year one was to build the rails. Everything we're doing now is we're building on top of that.
Okay.
So it might be a product for the partner we work with. For us, it's not a product.
Okay.
It's a future, or it's an additional value. And so a lot of what we focused on was just building the initial rails where everything else will ride on. So we spent quite a bit just building the rails and ensure. And the way we've built a lot of what we've done is quite modular, so it can stand alone, but it's also connected. So we've ensured that all that is there, and now we continue to now build things on top of it. Now, what are some of those things that we're building on top of it? We want to be able to take off some of the headaches that the banks face with settlement today. There's a lot of mess when it comes to settlement. And so we'll be building solutions to just make that easier for them. How does that help us? What it means is that they trust me better, because they would definitely use my other solution, because I'm also going to give them the settlement piece, right? Okay. Things around fraud. You spoke about fraud. There are solutions around fraud that we already have, but we're now pushing out into the market. And because there's also it's not, a lot of the fraud tools today are still very manual. So there's a lot of machine learning and AI that would help to ensure that things are done better. So that is also coming out. There are also things around the merchant side, and just being able to ensure that they're getting their. So there are many things that you see in the merchant space. There's a lot of me too. So everybody goes into doing the same thing, but until you sit down with a merchant, you realize that actually it doesn't work that way for everyone. So some of those things will be fixed. I won't be able to disclose now, but we'll be fixing some of those, because it's not a me too game. It's about sitting down and listening to what exactly the merchant wants.
All right. So are you going to consider acquisitions at any point to either extend the value you offer to your customers, or maybe to get into new markets? Would acquisitions be something that you consider?
Why do people acquire?
I mean, you could be acquiring me for my company, for my team, or my technology, or to just ease entrance into a new country.
And those are usually the reasons. So
Okay.
The main thing is we look at our business, we look at how we want to expand. If we want to go into particular countries, and we look at the cost of starting afresh versus leveraging a partnership that exists or an entity that we can acquire, why not? So those are definitely things that are always on the table. You acquire because you're looking at what it takes to build in maybe a technology. You don't necessarily have the skill, but you see that there's an interplay, or you could benefit from that interplay, so you could do the acquisition. So definitely these are things that are on the table. We'd never say never. Okay. However, our focus at this point in time isn't that in particular, but definitely it's something that's possible.
All right. So last question. Where do you see hydrogen in 5 years? I mean, that's standard getting to know you question.
All right. So I think it's very simple. One is to make sure that 1 out of every 3 transactions in Africa has something to do with us.
Okay.
Directly or indirectly. And why I say that is because we play largely as well in the infrastructure place. So that transaction, it might start off from a card to a POS, and then there's maybe an inventory leg. There's always something. There might just be an element. So 1 out of every 3 transactions will come through hydrogen in 5 years.
Awesome. Okay.
Secondly is we want to propel Africa into a brighter future. So in 5 years, in fact, maybe before 5 years, in 5 years, today you have Africa going to San Francisco. San Francisco will come to Africa, and they'll beg to be part of us.
Those are really bold dreams, and I'm hoping that happens, because it benefits everyone, not just hydrogen.
Exactly.
If San Francisco comes to Africa,
yes,
it benefits every one of us. So
exactly.
I'm wishing you success in that.
Thank you.
Thank you for such an interesting conversation.
Thank you so much.